But now that that temple is there, it's almost like there's a joy. There's an incredible joy and hope that has come into our history and the telling of our history, because we recognize better now that the temple isn't just a ruin, or just a plot of ground with grass growing on it as it used to be. Now that there is the temple, a replica of the temple standing there, a functioning temple where ordinances are done, we begin to see more powerfully the power of the saints in moving on beyond Joseph's death and finishing that temple and leaving it as soon as it was done. In fact, Brigham left before it was finished, and certain people were assigned to stay and finish it up, and he had to go. They were being forced out, right?
Right.
But the power of that visual of the temple being there and understanding the commitment of the saints to carry on and complete that work, even though they knew they were going to be walking away from it. There's just nothing more powerful than that.
It is time for another episode of The Cultural Hall, and I'm excited to welcome in Cynthia Collier. Now, we'd scheduled this before, but we are two very, very busy people. We've got tons of things going on, and so finally, through the magic of the internet, I'm able to connect with Cynthia and able to find all about her, certainly, but you can anticipate we will be talking a bunch about the pageants, yes, plural, in Nauvoo within our time together. Cynthia, welcome into the Cultural Hall.
Thank you. It's so good to be here with you, Richie.
And I think that you got recommended to us by your brother-in-law. He said, hey, I'm willing to be on at some point, but why don't you first talk to Cynthia and then we'll see how that goes. And then he's going to decide if he's going to spend the time. I'm not sure that's exactly how it went, but it might have been something like that.
Well, it sounds like I'm the person that drinks the poison first,
Yeah.
and then he sees if I survive, he'll take it.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to the conversation there as well. Your official title, if we want to say that, or calling, maybe there is a little bit of both within this, is the artistic director for the pageants at Nauvoo. Did I nail it?
Yeah, that's close enough. That's good. Yeah.
So is it a calling or is it a job or is there a difference in your mind?
Well, it's not a job. It's not a calling. It's maybe a little bit of a hybrid. We consider ourselves volunteers,
Okay.
who
So
work
not
on,
paid.
yeah, not paid, but there is some compensation and cover of our personal expenses.
Okay.
For the weeks that we actually spend in Nauvoo, our we do get some compensation, I would say, an honorarium for that.
Sure.
And the rationale for that is that, people with a particular skill set are needed to do this service. Their prime season for earning money in this way, theatrical, summer stock, that sort
Sure.
of thing, is that time. And so there is a need for them to be able to accept this, means they have to make another financial sacrifice. And very often they're in that stage of life where they got to have an income, as opposed to, say, empty nesters and people who are ready to serve missions.
Sure.
So that's kind of why the arrangement has been set up that way.
So tell me, let's start here. Pageants. Maybe someone doesn't even know what a pageant is. I suppose there could be a member of the church that's listening to this and goes, what's the difference? Why don't we call them musicals or, plays or
Mhm.
something like that?
Yeah.
What is a pageant? And then why are there pageants two
Mhm.
or more in Nauvoo?
Okay. Well, first of all, pageants were a cultural phenomenon throughout this country, and frankly, in other Western countries too. Like when there's a national narrative or a cultural narrative that wants to be celebrated and perpetrated,
Hmm.
to the young, a pageant was a classic way of doing that. And in the old days, in my parents' generation, for example, or earlier, you could find them in many areas of our country,
Hmm.
and even the famous Oberammergau in Germany, which is a big passion play that gets done every 10 years and has become a huge kind of global phenomenon that people travel to see, is originated in this way. This was a place that wanted to celebrate their Christianity, their faith in Jesus Christ. So they created this amazing passion play that has become something huge. And our own in our own in our own country, we can find you used to be able to go to small towns everywhere, and they'd be celebrating the settlement of their town and
Mhm.
the founding fathers of their town, and they go through the narrative story that they had agreed on was, this is what we value, this is who we are. That's what a pageant used to be. Very celebratory, very affirming. And this form of art, cultural art or phenomenon, has more or less gone by the wayside.
Mhm.
But within our church, it's stayed alive quite well. We used to have a small pageant in Clarkston, um, Cache Valley, for example, where this Martin Harris story was celebrated, and down in Price, Utah, they had a great one that focused specifically. And of course, the Manti pageant was a big one for many years,
Sure.
focusing on the Book of Mormon. And of course, the granddaddy of them all for us was the pageant in Palmyra. And that one too began in, I think, the 1920s or so,
Mhm.
with missionaries pulling together bed sheets and bathrobes and whatever they could for costumes, and put on a production to teach the story of the Book of Mormon. And eventually it grew until the church saw, hey, this is a thing, and began to lend its support. And I can't tell you exact years. I just can tell you this is how it developed. And from Palmyra, it grew out into the west. In Mesa, that's the one my brother-in-law is involved in, and that's
Mhm.
the wonderful pageant that's been beloved there, recently completely revised and rewritten and reproduced. And then the pageants in Nauvoo began with a pageant called the City of Joseph. I can't tell you the exact year. I think it was more or less in the 70s, where local people decided that it'd be wonderful to tell the story of Nauvoo, and they created this script. They put together. I mean, it was a grassroots offering, and with song, with dance, with whatever they could think of that would be an attraction to their neighbors, and a way for Latter-day Saints to celebrate that story. They created the City of Joseph, and that ran for a phenomenal 27 years.
Jeez.
And yeah, and the church at some point also lended their support and effort to that production. Um,
Just interrupting real quick. One of the things that
mhm,
I think I always sort of knew, being a Utah boy born and raised, about the Manti pageant,
mhm,
because I had a sister-in-law who lived in Manti, and it was their thing. And when my brother was dating before they got married, they were like, "You got to come down and check this out." I had no idea what it was otherwise, but I just sort of thought there was this, and then I found out about the Hill Cumorah pageant because
mhm,
my grandfather, when he served in the Eastern States mission, was one of these missionaries who was called to kind of bring the Hill Cumorah pageant together. It's not a culturally appropriate picture now, but there's a picture that is infamous within our family of my grandfather wearing an Indian headdress and not having a shirt on and being as part of this
yeah.
pageant. And then I can remember, so I got to serve my mission in the Cleveland, Ohio mission, and we weren't allowed to listen to a lot of different kinds of music, but we were allowed to listen to anything that we could get from the church library. And this is the back in the day of cassette tapes in your car. We found a City of Joseph like soundtrack that we could listen to, and so I'll be darned if we didn't. City of Joseph, city
Beauty,
beautiful, city
beautiful
of
city of
Joseph,
Joseph,
Nauvoo.
Nauvoo.
Yeah, because it was something that wasn't the Tabernacle Choir that would give us a little bit of flavor of all those things. So to kind of find that there are all these different pageants in different places and different stories being told. Would you say the difference between like a pageant and a musical is that there's like a message that underlies it, or what is there that distinction? Is it the gathering of people maybe not professionally that are sharing this message, or is there even a thing and we just attribute pageant to outdoor things and plays to indoor things? Or
Well, a lot of all those elements could be part of it, Richie. I think that I'm no expert on pageants in general or why that term, but I think perhaps we still call what's going on in Nauvoo a pageant because it shares in common that goal of affirming who we understand ourselves to be
Mhm.
and the best part of ourselves, I would even say. This is about saying what our ideals are.
Mhm.
This may not be a perfect picture of who we actually are, but it's who we strive to be, who we want to be, and the principles on which we hope we can aspire to. Um, and that would be different from a regular work of art that's a musical that might be have a different sort of intent, which might be to unfold the foibles of human beings or
Mhm.
where we are weak or expose something. I mean, you never know what a work of art is after, but a pageant really specifically, I can say with confidence that this is meant to affirm our best ambitions as a people and what we believe, you
And
know.
why they can be such great missionary tools as well, because it can paint a picture of what's possible within the gospel, because these are the ideals. Certainly,
Mhm.
we don't always live up to our ideals, both collectively or as individuals, but it is, I
Mhm.
like that. I like that that's a, hey, this is what we seek after, what we hope to be, what we,
Mhm.
hope to rise to. But pageants, why are there two pageants? Why don't we just lump them together and edit them and
Okay.
make them one?
Well, that was an evolutionary process. In '04, the City of Joseph pageant was retired. And yet in '05, there was going to be an important anniversary for Joseph Smith, which was the 200th anniversary of his birth. And at church headquarters, they felt like, gosh, we've got to have something in Nauvoo in '05 that is acknowledging this important anniversary for Joseph Smith, City of Joseph, right?
Hmm.
So a group was assembled quickly to address this need. Group of writers. We had been a group that had worked together at church headquarters to develop the live performance of Savior of the World, which happens there every Christmas. And we were already actually working on a new project for that theater. And the call came in that said, "Hey, we need you to switch your purpose and apply it toward Nauvoo."
Hmm.
And so we quickly shifted gears and had about 9 months, which is quite short for
Yes.
anybody that's putting on a major production that would involve hundreds of people and all kinds of talent. We shifted our direction and applied our efforts quickly to creating a script for Nauvoo that was then 9 months later able to be put up. And that was a very pioneering effort. It took 2, maybe 3 years to really get that solidified and get it all built out. But that went up in '05, and it told the story of that 7 year period of coming out of Missouri and into this um, swampland on this peninsula in Nauvoo that Joseph had found and designated as a place where we might be able to make this happen,
Hmm.
and um, and then of the mission to the British Isles that the Quorum of the 12 was sent on from Nauvoo, the bringing of all those saints over to strengthen and reinforce and help the church be strong, and leading up to the departure, the Exodus. So the martyrdom, of course, being an important climax of that, the finishing of the temple. Out of that, we had a cast member in those very early years, a young British woman who, pardon me, who was studying at BYU, getting a master's degree in theater. And she heard that this Nauvoo pageant had a role for a British woman, Leonora
Hmm.
Taylor,
Hmm.
and she thought, I'd love to spend my summer doing that. She auditioned, was cast in that role, and in that summer, she witnessed the empowering and strengthening effect this experience was having not only on her own faith, but on the faith of the people she was leading and working with in the family cast, as we call it, the cast of volunteers, and on audiences. And she just had a deep feeling that this was something that needed to happen for the saints in Great Britain,
Hmm.
that this story was their story, and that some aspect of this story this experience needed to be created and duplicated over there. Well, to make a long story short, she was kind of coached in how this thing sort of happens in the church. Church doesn't go over and say, "Hey, we're going to give you a pageant."
Right.
It's over there that they need to say, "We need this, we want this." And so her name is Alex Johns now. At the time, it was Alex McKenzie, and she's now a professor of theater at BYU.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Yeah, and but she went home back and forth as her time allowed, and worked with members and leaders over there, and there was agreement in the feeling, and so she headed a writing team. I was able to be part of that writing team that created a script, and eventually a score was created, and the thing was brought to pass. It took 7 years to make that happen, but in 2013 they put up this beautiful pageant over there. It was realized that these two stories really are intertwined, and the potential was seen, that the structure of these two productions was close enough that they could be performed in repertory in Nauvoo. So the following summer, after Nauvoo had been running for 10 years at that point, we went ahead and put these up in repertory. So every other night you would see Nauvoo and then British, then Nauvoo, then British, performed by the same cast.
Hmm.
And that was a great success. People loved the experience. It was intense. It meant that we had 1 week to teach two pageants to incoming family cast members instead of 1 week to teach one pageant.
Yeah, because
But
it wasn't hard enough before. You needed to
yeah,
make it twice as hard.
exactly.
Sure, I get it.
That's exactly right. But people, their ingenuity and their faith is amazing, and wonderful, talented organizers and directors and performers combine their efforts to make this happen. And it has continued that way ever since. So,
What were the guiding principles? Because when you think about like, even just the 7 years, and I guess with the original Nauvoo pageant, so much happened.
mhm.
Uh,
In Nauvoo, you
in
mean?
Nauvoo specifically, right? I mean, from the temple to the martyrdom to like all of the things in and surrounding, and you could get very easily into the weeds with some things and some things that maybe are important but not pertinent. Was there and maybe you've already answered this, but was there like a guiding principle of like, this is what would need to be here, and this is what we would maybe not leave out to be deceiving or anything like that, but just like it, like how did you determine what would be included as far as the
Yeah.
things for the pageant?
Well, I'll begin this by saying, because it was a first presidency project,
Hmm.
the creating of the Nauvoo pageant, there was quite a bit of guidance from the senior brethren
Yeah.
about, and one important piece of guidance that they gave us was that Preach My Gospel, the first edition,
Right.
was about to be released. It was finished. They handed us a copy of it at the writing team, and said, "Please use this as your guide, the
Mm.
teaching of the gospel." And so we did. We basically made sure that as this story unfolded, people would be able to identify gospel principles, the foundational gospel principles. So that was one guide that we had.
Yeah.
Then how do you select from all the historical events? Well, we have to think about what are the crucial pieces of the Church of Jesus Christ as we now know it and experience it, and how did Nauvoo play into the origins of those things? So we know that certain things do have to be mentioned. There would certainly be just the calling of the prophet. Is he a prophet? Well, yes, we affirm he was a prophet,
Hmm.
and that God spoke to him, and that Jesus Christ was his main message. And so that comes out right out of the gate. We often would have young missionaries who came home from their missions be able to identify it. They'd listen to it and they say, "It feels just like Preach My Gospel." And we say, "Well, there's a reason for that." um, we know we can't tell the story of Nauvoo without telling what their intent was to build a Zion, to build a city of God.
Mm-hmm.
We have to tell about the building of the temple. We have to, and the story of the prophet culminates in the story of his martyrdom and his giving his life for it.
Mm-hmm.
We have to tell about the women and the crucial role they played in holding Nauvoo together. And we have to tell the amazing story of that mission to Great Britain, leaving behind those women in malaria, dealing with ague, as they called it,
Mm-hmm.
and the huge sacrifice made on both parts, and the miraculous mission, the hundreds, the people that are responding by the hundreds over there, and capturing the spirit of gathering. They almost, it was almost an effortless, people just automatically, as soon as they were baptized, they seemed to want to emigrate to Nauvoo. Is a line from the pageant, a direct quote from one of the letters of the 12
Mm-hmm.
who went over there. And so this spirit of gathering that came over those British saints as they were baptized into the gospel, and the strength that they brought to that city, the crucial strength that they brought. And these are all parts of the story. We got to tell about the establishment of the Relief Society.
Right.
That happened in Nauvoo, so of course that has a part to play. And these are all such important stories that we found in an hour and 15-minute production. You can't do them justice.
Mm-hmm.
We got to the point where we had a 2.5-hour script, and that, of course, wasn't going to work.
Nope.
Wasn't going to meet the needs. And so we had to cut out how could we sacrifice these chunks of story that are so important? Well, we made a compromise by having these put into little vignettes, we call them.
Mm-hmm.
These stories are told in little vignettes that happen during the daytime in Nauvoo and other places, and our core cast will spend part of their days telling these stories in locations around Nauvoo.
Okay.
Yeah. So you can go, as you have in the early days, you could take your family to see these vignettes performed in various locations during the day, and then at night they would come together and see it all on the big stage. So
Well,
so does that answer that question?
yeah, I think so. And I think on top of all that, you have to determine what of all the things that goes along with preach my gospel. And there's also this little thing called it has to be entertaining, because you can pack all that in and people can be like, what are we watching? Why have we done this way? But being able to make it entertaining as well, continuing to move, to have momentum. And there is a beauty, an art, word is escaping me right now, to being able to tell these stories in a way that not only can be cognitively understood, but be able to be felt.
Yeah.
And that was the charge. And they're like, oh, yeah. And go ahead and do that in 9 months. And we're
Well,
able to do it.
you get it. Well, this project was led by a person who I esteem so highly for his gifts, who is David Warner. And he has an incredible sense about the depth of history, not just our modern latter-day history, but the depth of scriptural history, the covenants that we are carrying on from anciently. He has an incredible sense about that. He's also got this incredible sense about the potential of theater. And he also has a really clued in modern sense of what do audiences need right now,
Mm-hmm.
And so under his leadership, we were able to kind of keep all of these needs in mind as we develop this. Part of the goal of the choreography is to have it be extremely fun, but reasonable. Now, City of Joseph was out of an era where fireworks and acrobatics and those were all part of that production in those days.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really valued and appreciated and welcome. And as we got into this more modern age, okay, and I should also add, most all of the old pageants and even the current Mesa pageant does not use live performers to speak or sing.
Mm-hmm. It's essentially all pre-recorded, and they are sort of like
Yes.
lip syncing, or in some cases just moving.
Yeah.
They enact a physical representation for the narration that's going on over.
Right. So it's a matter of getting the person with the right look who can move well, and etc.
Mm-hmm.
We introduced in Nauvoo in 2005 live performance, and so the actors are mic'd. They are actors. They are singers, um, and they perform these things live. Part of the rationale behind that is that this presentation is meant to be an effort of faith, and the testimony and the faith of those involved on stage and their real feelings about these ideas are crucial to the impact it has.
Mm.
And so that's why we set this up that way. Now, I thought of that because of your previous question. You remember
Sure.
what your question was?
Sure. Well, so let me take a break here, and then we'll come back. I have a fairly it's a pertinent question that I'll hope that you would be willing to speculate a little bit about. I would be curious about this. I know that's quite the tease. Let's take a break. We'll come back and we'll hit it in the second block. Let me take just a moment to tell you all about bestdjinutah.com. That is the website where you can learn all about me. Oh, sure, you probably feel like you know me, but you know me in the cultural hall sense. I have a DJ company, now 6 of us strong, great event hosts, MCs, and DJs that can be able to make whatever event you have coming up absolutely spectacular, and hope you will reach out to us. Now you're thinking, well, wait a minute, Richie, I don't live in Utah. Would you travel? Absolutely, I would travel. Would they travel? Absolutely, they would travel. Whatever your event is, doesn't have to be a wedding or a community event. We can do all sorts of things. I can teach you line dancing. I can dance with you. We can do partner dancing. We can do all kinds of things, but we can't do any of it if you don't hit me up. You can go to bestdjinutah.com. You can fill out the form to get more information or get a quote, and then I will get right back to you. Find out why I'm so busy and why sometimes we don't get episodes of the Cultural Hall. It's all because of bestdjinutah.com. Here in the second block of the Cultural Hall, remember, you can always leave a review for the show wherever you are listening. Most often, it's people that listen via Apple or Spotify. You can drop those 5 stars and say, what a great episode. I loved hearing about the origins of the Nauvoo pageant from Cynthia. Or you could say other things, but don't say anything negative. Just keep that to yourself. No one needs that on the internet. Let's put some positivity out. Make those reviews. Do it. You've said you were going to do it. You put it on the list. You've not yet done it. Just go ahead and leave that review. We welcome it. We share those on the show as well. So take that opportunity, please, and thank you. Review the show. Now, Cynthia, let me ask you this. What is it, 5 years ago now that the church said, hey, we're kind of not in the pageant business anymore. That was when Manti, and I may have timing a little bit off, but that's when Manti sort of disappeared. That's when the Hill Cumorah pageant disappeared. And a lot of these, in fact, I wanted to go to the Hill Cumorah pageant and never went to, but was planning on going the year that was canceled. Why is it, do you suppose, that Nauvoo has been kept around, spared, if you will, Mesa has been spared, when so many other have been dissolved? Do you have any sort of insight or thoughts or anything like that?
Well, I wasn't in the room when these things were decided.
Sure.
And I can only tell you, this is just me, okay?
Yeah.
What I
Speaking
don't
for
know.
Cynthia, let us be
Yeah.
very clear. She is speaking for her. Okay.
So it's probably a combination of factors. But I think that the old style of pageant probably had seen its day. And so that may have been one reason why. Another reason why is that the church was putting significant resources behind the sustaining of these productions.
Mm-hmm.
And it made sense in the day when the church was mostly American. But now that the church has grown to be such a global church, they had to constantly reevaluate, is this something that is a blessing that church funds should go toward to help the church in general?
Mm-hmm.
Is this too local for that?
Right.
I think maybe that factored in, probably made a difference. Why would we then keep a pageant in Nauvoo? This is me conjecturing. I mean, interestingly, historically, Nauvoo was the first major gathering place. Now, Kirtland was a first stage on the way to that. And yes, we got a temple that was sort of a first stage temple on the way to the temple as we know it now.
Mm-hmm.
But Nauvoo is where 15,000 people gathered before they were done. And it was a huge bustling community of people trying to create Zion together. And in that sense, it kind of makes sense for Nauvoo to be a modern gathering place of the saints, a modern location where church headquarters actually can say, yeah, we will put our money behind Nauvoo now as a place of pilgrimage, if you will, where we come to learn our heritage, to learn more about our own faith, to build our faith, and that is maintained. And it may be that because the Nauvoo pageants, as modernly conceived, the British modern pageant are conceived as a little bit more modern style of performance, that it still meets the needs of audiences today. That may have a factor in it too. And at the time that the church made that decision, they actually didn't say we aren't allowing pageants anymore. They just basically said to all the local areas where pageants are produced, they said the church will no longer be providing support for these,
right?
But we welcome you. If you wish to carry them on, you're welcome to do so. And those ones went by the wayside. Most of them did.
Yeah.
And I think Mesa clearly had a desire to keep that going. It's a very popular pageant in that local area. I think they somehow negotiated some additional support from the church. I'm not quite sure how that. I shouldn't speak at all. Alan can tell you more about that.
Yeah. It brings up another question. With it being written, that is the Nauvoo pageant in this iteration, 20 plus years now at this point, 2004 to now 2025. I can remember shows that I've been in that were written 20 years ago that when I go back and read, I go, oh, we probably need to change this a little bit. Have there been revision points throughout the last 20 years where you're like, we probably meant this or said this, or is it as it originally was written with that room of people in the 9 months in 2004?
Yeah, I think it has been reviewed. And I have participated in some kind of unofficial reviews. And so far, there hasn't been any requests for significant updates. And it might be because of the foundation on which this was built, that it really was, it wasn't a local thing. It was very much guided and has the major messages of the church right now in it. And those things don't change so quickly. Yeah. There might be some reconsiderations of all kinds of things that would be, responsive to cultural norms and changes as that we go through, like the way it's casted or the way it may be staged here and there. Certain kinds of things like that,
right,
have adapted as time has gone on, and yet will probably. And who knows how long this will go on? I have no idea.
Sure,
but. Right now, as of now, 20 years down the road, we're still pretty much presenting the one that was developed in those first couple of years.
That's incredible. Shows sort of the connection to the spirit and being able to provide what was intended by it. It would be a different story if it's like, yeah, we did a thing and then the next year it's changed completely. I think the connectivity notwithstanding within the church and to the gospel, to the doctrine, to the time, that you guys just, I don't know, kind of nailed it.
With a ton of help,
Yes, yeah,
with a ton of help that I hope we did. It had input from many quarters, and so I hope it's still meeting needs. It seems to be. It seems that we have every year. We should probably talk about how this is cast and who performs this.
Yeah, that's actually where I was leading to next, because I think for some, like, this is the mission that they maybe could never or didn't ever serve because of its uniqueness and how it works. So how are these things? When do they start? When does it end? How could people, if they wanted to be involved with this, how can they be involved?
Yeah. Well, so the way it was designed, former pageants would take, just like we do, they would take volunteers to come in and perform it, but they would only rehearse and perform usually for a max of a couple of weeks. And Nauvoo is such a small town. It really, and audiences would attend in the thousands. So up to 7,000, I think that's the figure in my head. I hope I'm right about that. So they might have 7,000 people a night converging on their little town. there's no way they could absorb all those, provide all those services. There's hardly a restaurant there, um, and so all of this was spilling over into surrounding communities. And as they were negotiating this new pattern with them way back in the early 2000s, it was proposed that maybe this pageant runs longer for fewer people a night. Maybe we can run it as long as 4 weeks. And that way we'll aim for a couple of thousand a night. And then Nauvoo, the town itself, will get more of the benefit of those visitors over time because they can absorb it more. And so that was part of the rationale in this. Another rationale is that we can accommodate about 125, 30 people on stage that are volunteer cast. Then we have our 20 or so, 20 to 22 or so that are part of the core cast. So about 150 people on stage every night. And these are families, and they can't come for more than 2 weeks, right? We need rehearsal time and we need performance time. So the plan was developed where we have a rotating family cast. And every week, a group of families and individuals arrives to start their rehearsal period. And then their second week, they move into their performance week. And a new set of families arrives, and we rehearse with them. And this rotates through to the end of the pageants. And so families who want to participate in this kind of need to have a couple of weeks to dedicate to it. They pay all their own expenses. So a lot of them are doing yard sales and bake sales and whatever little means they can to sock away that money to be able to do this. And others have means and they can more easily afford it. And they come and they bring their campers in some cases, live in their trailers for 2 weeks. Some of them, others of them rent Airbnbs or other places around town. This is all at their own expense. So it's a real sacrifice and a dedication.
Let me ask, just technical as far as that goes. Do you have like about what it would cost? Like if someone is listening to this and they're like, well, if you could average it out to per person, it's probably X amount to be able to do it.
You know what? I don't have that information, Richie, but I bet it's available if you go online and look around.
Okay.
It might even be on the page where they have information for people who want to apply.
Okay.
And so, yeah, and families should know that, individuals should know that for the family cast, as we call it, we don't have auditions. It's an application process. And we don't necessarily select people based on their performing ability. People always say, "Oh, you wouldn't want me. I don't, sing and dance.
I got 2 left feet. I've been
yeah.
that kind of stuff."
And the beautiful thing about that is that isn't required. You'll often find that moms initiate this within families. Sometimes it's a dad.
Sure.
More often it's a mom. And she might be having to kind of nudge her husband along onto this and really kind of get him to, and he'll come in a little bit less sure. The beautiful thing about it is we see within a couple of days of their arriving, no one's more excited than the dad because he sees things happening in his kids, and they're the ones that are usually the drivers to get the family back there a second or third time as it's possible, because I don't know what it is. I can't explain it. I guess we have to attribute it to the Holy Ghost, that there is a beautiful spirit that enters into the creating of and the doing of this work, that we tried to not destroy. We try not to get in the way of it. We do everything we can to make our process as supportive of that spirit as possible. And people have amazing experience with their children in doing this. I used to think of it in the early days. My family was young enough that we would participate in this. And I thought, my kids are coming away from this with the same energy and zeal and spirit that they come home from a youth conference. Only the difference is I was there.
Yeah.
And I got to be there with them. I got to have that. We had that together as a family. So it's really marvelous in that way. And most people who make the sacrifice find it's worth every penny and a lot more.
Well, and unique in its approach too, in that, like, if it was like, hey, it needs to be 12 weeks in the summer, that lessens the pool of families being able to do that, right?
Yeah.
Who can take that, 3-month break from work and be able to do it? And then also, aside from maybe like mission presidents, I don't know a lot of people who have the opportunity to serve with their entire family. And so to be able to have the performing aspect, which I would contend is a kind of connectivity and vulnerability that you can't get anywhere else, participating in artistic endeavors with other people and with your family. And then the religious aspect of being in this very sacred place where you're sharing a very powerful message from God to people that may or may not be hearing it for the first time or receiving it or gaining testimony of the things like that, and that you're able to then look back on it as a time when probably not a lot of cell phones because we didn't have a lot of time to do that stuff. We're not running off to the water park and or these things that we sort of go and do to not be present with one another. This is like an intensive family connective just phenomenon that I don't know that the church provides this really anywhere or any time else.
Yeah, it's pretty unique in that way. And it's become really popular. I mean, we have more applicants for the family cast than ever before. People desire to have this experience with their families. We used to be able to let people repeat
Mm-hmm.
many years if they wanted to, but it would now mean we're hopeful to let people have at least one chance to do it. And we always need a certain number to repeat
Mm-hmm.
because it helps our rehearsal process immensely. It moves it along much faster if a few people up there on the stage know what they're doing.
Sure. Sure.
And so we always have some repetition for some people, but we try to spread the opportunity around as much as possible.
Now you mentioned that's the family cast, but there are
Mhm.
opportunities for that core. Uh,
Yeah,
Maybe
what we
very
call the
quickly.
yeah.
How does one become one of those?
Well, we have auditions every January.
Mm-hmm.
We audition. We send out notice for actors who are interested to audition, and we go through a somewhat lengthy selection process. Um, because this is very immersive,
Mm-hmm.
they aren't just showing up at a theater and performing every night. They are living elbow to elbow every day, and they are immersed not only in the performing of it, but in the teaching of it to the family cast. They provide spiritual leadership to the family cast. We have the family cast all split up into districts, and every core cast member is not only a performer but also a district leader and has a family or two and a few individuals that they kind of keep under their wing and look after and help through the learning process. And they form these fantastic relationships with each other. I think most of these performers who come in the core cast go home feeling like it was awesome to play Joseph Smith, or it was wonderful to play Emma Smith.
Mm-hmm.
But the best thing about this experience was being with these families and having this shared experience together that just it adds so much richness and power to it.
And are those individuals set apart as missionaries? I want in the back of my mind, I think I thought that once upon a time they were missionaries.
I think once upon a time that was done in the earlier days, but we don't do that anymore.
Okay.
Nor do the family cast. They used to get set apart by stake presidents
Oh,
before they
really?
came.
Okay.
We don't do that anymore either. That said, the spirit of calling is infused in this process. I don't get set apart for my role either.
Sure.
But there's no doubt in my mind, that I felt called to do this, called upon to say yes to this responsibility.
Hmm.
And so I view it that way as something that comes to me from the Lord. And many people have that experience as well. But it is not an official calling anymore from the church to do this.
Can the core actors can they be any age? Is it a certain age limit? How long do they need to be able to commit to it if they get
Yeah,
past that kind of stuff?
we actually really need people of all ages. And from we need young people that we have college age. Our cast tends toward that age, not because that's all we take, but because that tends to be who's most available.
Yeah, that's life,
But
right? You
right,
have kids at home that you got to provide for. It's hard to sell the, hey, I'm going to go be a core cast for, 2
yeah,
weeks. Good luck. See you there.
and right, and we used to in the very earliest times we would bring people and not bring their families, but we have found that there are a lot of good reasons for bringing the actors' families along if that can be worked out to do
Yeah.
so. So we have that wonderful experience of having their children be involved and their wives, and they go home having had this experience as a family as well.
Yeah.
Rather than some strange thing that dad or mom was off doing, for weeks. So we have this year people, core cast members that are in their 60s down to their early 20s. I don't think we've got any teenagers in there this year, but we have had core cast members as young as their late teens.
And you guys
So
are in the thick of it now. When does it
uh,
kick off? When can people go to Nauvoo and see this? And when does it sort of end? What is that window of time?
it opens for audiences on the first Tuesday after the 4th. This year, that is, I'm sorry, I should have this in my head, but it all gets mixed
Of the
up.
4th of July, is that what we're saying?
The 4th of July, it's usually the first Tuesday after the 4th of July that we
So the
open.
8th of July.
The 8th of July, it is this year, yes. And it will close, it runs for 4 weeks, and it will close usually the first Saturday in August. Unless we have an early July opening, like the 5th or something, then it might be the last Saturday in July. But this week, it's, I think, the 3rd of July, 3rd of August is our last night. So if people want to come, there are no tickets. You just come. You just show up in Nauvoo, and there is a run for seats.
Mhm.
And they have a system whereby people can save seats in the early afternoon for that evening's performance.
You just
So
It's just like when we do with parades here in Utah. You just take chairs and you just put them out and leave them for days, right? Is that no,
right.
I'm just teasing.
No, yeah, that does happen here. No, it's every night it starts fresh again. You can't save the night before for the next night. So
You put your family ribbon out. This and listen, it's the Sorensen family. We're here. We took this last night. You can't come tonight. I want to take another break. When we come back, there are three questions we ask everyone who steps into the cultural hall. I'll ask those of you. Plus, I got a couple other that I want to get to. We'll come back and do
okay.
that in the third block of the cultural hall. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, man, you know what? I could do a podcast. You should. Having a podcast has been one of the things that a lot of people have really sought out to do. Some just to see, can I even do this thing? I'm here to tell you that you can. And I have consulted lots of people to be able to do it. Now, some people, I consult them and they go, oh, this was way more than I ever thought it would be. And other people go, oh, you know what? A podcast isn't for me, but you helped me decide to do this thing. Whatever it is, maybe it will end up being a podcast, or maybe it'll just end up being that we have some great times together. You realize that it's time to do that in a different season of your life, or this season is now. You can reach out to me, contact@theculturalhall.com, and say podcast consultant, or my email address, Richie, RICHIET, Stedman @gmail.com. And be sure that you put podcast consultant in the subject line. Would love to talk to you and see if having a podcast would be the right thing for you. Here in the third block of the Cultural Hall, you can always send us an email, contact@theculturalhall.com. We love it. We share those on the show as well. Remember, if you do not want your email shared on the show, that the first line of your email needs to say something like, please do not share this email on the show. Otherwise, I will get to the end of the email where you say, please do not share it, and I've already read it, and I'm not going to go back and edit it out. So first line of the email needs to say, do not share this if you don't want it shared. People talking about different episodes, guests that they would like to see, different points of different episodes that they would like to discuss more. That's all welcome. Contact@theculturalhall.com. Now, let me ask you this. Obviously, the time to go to Nauvoo is in the summertime, and more specifically when the pageants are going on. It is an extra added level to being able to not only see our history portrayed, but a certain sensitivity of spirit, and it is the time to go to it. Knowing that, though, and speaking to a broader audience that maybe hasn't ever been to any of these church history sites, what do you think the value is, just in general, about going to any of these places, pageant or not?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a lot of wonderful things happening in all church history sites. Nauvoo's unique because it's a whole community, it's a whole city. If you were to go in the spring or the fall, it's a beautiful time to be there. Summer's hot, but that's when most people have time to be there.
Right?
And there are these wonderful homes that missionaries are there to receive visitors, to tell the stories of the people who live in those homes. The church history department was tasked several years ago, when a lot of these shifts were made, with taking over all the historical sites, including Nauvoo. And so now, more than ever, prior to that, it was the missionary department, and they did a great job. But now church history is fully responsible to be sure that the things that are the stories that are told, the messaging there is true history and accurate. Um, and they are prepared, they've prepared their missionaries to understand and answer hard questions. But the real reason is like, go and find out your faith, find out the origins of your faith, find out the deep roots of these people. Their lives were amazing. I've been immersed in it lately once again, because we're creating some new material for the performing missionaries who are another part of the work in Nauvoo. The pageant's just there for a month, but the performing missionaries stretch over many months. They are there doing productions and presentations from May through October, and they do vignettes around town. They perform music. They have a lot of wonderful things to offer during that time, and they are there right now as we speak, already developing and working on their performances. And even in the season when the performing missionaries aren't there, the richness of being able to visit the home of Brigham Young and get to the root of who this man was. And, he doesn't always get the respect that I personally feel he deserves, and who was John Taylor? Do people even know who this man was? And their incredible wives, Phoebe Woodruff. We've been studying her lately in Come Follow Me. She got a little bit of a feature in the Voices of the Restoration part. And that's barely scratching the surface of who this incredible Latter-day Saint was that gave everything, literally everything, to see that this work went forward. They responded to this call. You feel that in Nauvoo. You just drive into the town. And I would say that any person that wants to understand more about American history and these religious movements would benefit from a visit to Nauvoo. But Latter-day Saints especially have every reason to carve out time in their lives to make that pilgrimage and to absorb the power of that place.
Has there been a difference for you since the church acquired like the Kirtland Temple and some of the other properties and things now over a year ago as we talk and have this discussion? Has there been a noticeable difference to you around any of that?
I would say the spirit of it all is the same. I have such great respect and admiration for the way those negotiations with the Community of Christ happened. They were respectful. They waited till the time was right, the time was ready. Everything was happened in the spirit of trust. That's my understanding. I wasn't involved, of course, but
Sure.
that's the feeling I get. And I do see a renewed enthusiasm for people to visit those what were formerly in the possession of Community of Christ, and now the church has the Joseph Smith Homestead, the Mansion House, the Red Brick Store. These are crucial places that where really important things happened that are central to our faith at this time. So it's amazing to be able to go in there and see those places and think about the significant things that happened there. And those are all part of the missionary presentation any time of year, so people can experience those. The performances are another layer that happens in the good weather seasons. So
is there a particular portion of the Nauvoo story? This is going to be like me asking you to pick a favorite kid, just so you know. But is there a particular part of the Nauvoo story that favorite isn't the way that I want to couch that, but that is most significant or most significant to you now?
Yeah. I've been around Nauvoo long enough because I had a connection to it even before I got involved in the pageants, long enough to recognize the difference that happened, the change that happened with the restoration of the temple there. Prior to that time, before that temple was there, it felt like the martyrdom of Joseph and Hiram was the climax of the Nauvoo story.
Mm-hmm.
And a visit to Carthage will never be anything but powerful. It's really powerful to recognize the sacrifice that was made on the part of the Smith family and others who were associated with them. But and all for the Savior's gospel, right? All for the restoration of the temple. But now that that temple is there, it's almost like there's a joy. There's an incredible joy and hope that has come into our history and the telling of our history, because we recognize better now that the temple isn't just a ruin, or just a plot of ground with grass growing on it as it used to be. Now that there is the temple, a replica of the temple standing there, a functioning temple where ordinances are done, we begin to see more powerfully the power of the saints in moving on beyond Joseph's death and finishing that temple and leaving it as soon as it was done. In fact, Brigham left before it was finished, and certain people were assigned to stay and finish it up, and he had to go. They were being forced out, right?
Right.
But that the power of that visual of the temple being there and understanding the commitment of the saints to carry on and complete that work, even though they knew they were going to be walking away from it. There's just nothing more powerful than that. And one has to ask oneself, am I doing that in any way in my life? What kind of Latter-day Saint am I? How much am I willing to sacrifice? And how much am I willing to risk and give to complete something that I will never personally be able to enjoy on a long-term basis? They all did that, and, boy, to go into that town and see that temple on that bluff, there's just, prepare yourself for a great moment when you have that, when you see that sight.
Beautifully said. It prompts me to share, and I'll share very briefly. So I've only been to Nauvoo one time, and I suffer from this great blessing of a thing called insomnia. You should look it up. It's very enviable. It's a thing
I'm so sorry.
that everyone should have. But what the insomnia the night that I stayed in Nauvoo provided me, because oftentimes what I'll do is I'll wake up and I'll be like, oh, it's very clear to me I'm not going back to sleep, at least not for a while. I left my hotel room and walked around the town of Nauvoo. I'm pretty sure to some people it was like, what is this strange person doing in this town in the middle of the night? But it was a uniquely spiritual experience like I've never had before, when the town was quiet. And as you mentioned, to be able to see the temple and the statue of the brothers of Joseph and Hiram, and to be able to absorb all of this in complete stillness and in the dark of the night, an experience that I will never forget. Transformational. And I think that you can have that just by being able to go there. You don't have to have insomnia to have that. You can just be able to experience the town.
Well, so many, pardon me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Oh, no, you're great.
No, so many people of all varieties, missionaries who've served there, just visitors who've passed through, they feel something there.
Yep.
They recognize there's something here. This is sacred ground in a way. Yeah, we have a lot of fun, and we are just ordinary people there, and we with all our foibles and faults and all, but you come away and you know that you've been someplace special.
Yeah. Cynthia, there are 3 questions we ask everyone who steps into the Cultural Hall. I will ask those of you now. The first question is do you have a calling right now? And if so, what is it?
My calling right now is a ministering sister.
Nice.
I've been heavily involved this year in some of the transition that's happening with the performances in Nauvoo. And so I had to say to my bishop, hey, just give me a little space right here. And then in August, everything should be freed up. But most recently, up until late last year, my husband and I were serving as ministers at the University of Utah Hospital and the Huntsman Hospital. So that was our calling back then. So I'm just on a little hiatus from
what an amazing calling I bet that was.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Boy, we could have a whole session on that too.
Yeah.
So it's really special.
The second question we ask everyone is if you could pick a calling, either one that exists or make one up, what would you pick?
Well, the one I have, ministering sister, that would be the one I would want to do to the ultimate best of my ability. I have around me women who do that. And wow, I have just immense respect for them. That's my ambition in life, I guess, is to be the best ministering sister I could be. But I'd take anything. I would love to be back in the nursery Yeah. Boy, compared to what I've been doing, those problems are very manageable.
Yeah. How many goldfish are we going to eat? Okay, I can fix this problem. I can address this.
Oh.
The last question we ask everyone who steps into the cultural hall, we ask you to invite, or we invite you to interpret this however you might. There's no right or wrong way to interpret it. The question just is what it is. And the question is, what is your favorite part of your faith?
My favorite part of my faith. Wow. Uh, for me, it's some blend of being kind of by nature somewhat introverted, but by exposure and training, a forced extrovert, so to speak.
Mhm.
It's got to be some blend of the intimate knowledge that I have from the scriptures, from the words of prophets about the Savior, who he is, his role in my life, and his presence in my life, and the obligation I am under as a Latter-day Saint to get out there and be with other people and share with them this experience of being a Latter-day Saint, or to, share it to those who may be part of it, to those who may not be part of it. That would be it. It would be easy for me to just hole up in my little desk in my room and write things and quietly live my own life. But I have an obligation not to do that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that it's incumbent upon me as a person who's made these promises to share my faith, my life with other people, and build that bond that we have together.
Yeah, beautifully said. For people that may be interested in learning more about the performing experience in Nauvoo, we'll have a link in the show notes so you can be able to find and check that out. Do you know that URL off the top of your head, Cynthia?
NauvooPageant.org, I think, is the place that they would go. And if that doesn't work, then Google it and they will find it.
You can also do show notes and be able to track it down. Listen, if it's meant to be, you'll find it to where it's supposed to be. We appreciate the time that you have spent with us. I know this is still in the height of preparation season. So Cynthia, I will let you go. We hope that this episode has nourished and strengthened your body, that if you're not healthy enough to listen this week, that you'll be healthy enough to listen next week, and that when the time comes, you will be able to travel home in safety. In the meantime, Chris at Alpine Lakes Travel, Debbie Wanless, Chocolate Cake Bites Podcast, and the Tiger, with a U, will be saving a seat for you on the back row of the Cultural Hall.
Save me a seat, it's sure to be neat on the back row.